I will say this. I will say this. You have been so great, and I'm very proud of you. And, you know, I'm a ratings person. You notice I always talk. Okay. Has anyone seen his rating? What you are doing to your competition is incredible. Number one, and I'm very proud of you. And it's an honor to be on your show. I have to tell you that, show.
And that is just about how rough it got for Donald Trump during his interview with Sean Hannity tonight on Fox News. During President Trump's interview with Sean Hannity before that large audience that was waiting for the president's speech today, mention of Senator John McCain brought boos from that crowd. And here's what happened when Sean Hannity asked a very good question, most important question of the night. What is the calm before the storm?
Calm before the storm, you're not going to talk about that either.
No, I don't talk about it.
Joining us now, Anna Marie Cox, a contributor to the New York Times Magazine and the host of the podcast With Friends Like These. And back with us are David Frum and Jason Johnson. And Anna Marie, to be fair to Sean Hannity, which is not the phrase you hear every night on this show, he actually went at the calm before the storm thing a couple of times and was right on the verge, obviously, as you saw there, of giving up. And when he said, you're obviously not going to talk about that, and Trump avoided it every time. We don't know, even with Sean Hannity's best effort, what calm before the storm means.
Best effort is, you know, we live in an era of low bars, so they're basically just a ladder on the ground now, but we're just stepping over them. So that's good. I enjoyed the interview. I'm very curious about who does their makeup, because my waterproof makeup tends to shed when people do that kind of tongue bath. But, you know, theirs seem to stay on okay. So that's something they should consider a sponsor for that. And, you know, one thing sort of seriously is that as much as I would love a real reporter to ask Trump a real question and to have him, you know, under threat of having his wig taken off, have to answer it, sometimes it's in these really relaxed settings that he reveals himself the most. And you know what? We saw a lot of the president. Not too much, but what we saw, you know, who he is tonight, much as we always do. And he's a selfish, tumescent sack of lies. And it's, I guess, nice to have that confirmed on a daily basis. I hope someday we'll be surprised, but probably won't be.
And David Frum, there were many striking moments in this, including, of course, talk about the NFL. But one of the moments that struck me, which is historically one of the strangest turns we've ever seen, is Sean Hannity talking about Julian Assange and saying that Julian Assange, he's talked to him, he knows the information that Julian Assange has, and Julian Assange can absolutely prove that Russia had nothing to do with interfering in this election. And if you would just allow him to come back to the country, it seemed like Sean Hannity was trying to broker a pardon with the president for Julian Assange to come to the United States and acquit the president of any possible connection to Russia.
Right. Well, remember, the reason Julian Assange was in hiding for all those years was not because of a charge under U.S. law, but because of rape charges in Sweden. So Fox News is sort of pivoting from saying, why doesn't every Democratic county commissioner say something about Harvey Weinstein, to then saying, oh, by the way, why don't we have a pardon for this, you know, our celebrity rapist? But what I was struck by in the president's answer was how cautious the president was. I mean, Sean Hannity set up the Sean Rich, he didn't use the name this time, conspiracy theory that Julian Assange and his Russian masters have promoted, which is it wasn't a Russian hack that got the DNC and caches and John Podesta's emails, but it was a purported insider. Trump refused to bite on that bait. He instead said Russia's a fake, he gave a lot of non-specific denials, but he did not go down the conspiracy theory path, nor did he repeat praise of Julian Assange, who is someone who has been attacking American national security now for close to a decade.
And Jason, the president has a 67% disapproval rating for the job he's supposed to be doing in the White House. He also has a 58% disapproval rating for the other job he's trying to do, that is NFL commissioner. The latest poll showing that 58% do not approve of Donald Trump's comments and interference with the NFL. Let's listen to Commissioner Trump tonight on the NFL.
I watched Colin Kaepernick, and I thought it was terrible. And then it got bigger and bigger and started mushrooming. And frankly, the NFL should have suspended him for one game, and he would have never done it again. They could have then suspended him for 2 games, and they could have suspended him if he did it a 3rd time for the season, and you would never have had a problem. But I will tell you, you cannot disrespect our country, our flag, our anthem. You cannot do that.
Jason, your reaction.
First off, I find it highly entertaining that you have an audience of people saying, clapping and cheering when Trump says you can't disrespect the flag, but they booed John McCain, the guy who was a POW defending our flag and what our country stands for. But I think what's also really interesting about this, I don't know what it is about failed presidents who want to be commissioners. Remember, George Bush actually wanted to be the baseball commissioner at one point. This is clearly the job that Trump is angling for if he ends up leaving the White House early. But it demonstrates his obsession with those things that he thinks he can control through narrative and through bullying as opposed to policy, deal-making, and negotiation. You would think that a president who has accomplished as little as Trump has accomplished, who is as unpopular as he is, would be talking more about the Iran deal instead of just one question, would be talking about how he's going to work with Congress. Instead, he wants to focus on football because that's something he thinks he can win because he's obviously give up on actually being a legislator and running the country.
And Anna Marie, just for the constitutional record, whenever I hear the president and people like him saying you cannot disrespect the flag, the United States Supreme Court has held that you can. You can burn it. You can use it for toilet paper. You can do whatever you want with it. That is what the First Amendment allows you to do with it. Whether you should or not is a matter of opinion, but whether you can is not.
No, it's not. Also, you don't have to stand for the national anthem. You don't have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. When I was a young punk rocker, I took great pride in the fact that I had that right because I was kind of a little jerk. I probably wouldn't do that today, except what we've found that it is to great effect to do these things right. We are talking more about the causes that Colin Kaepernick wanted us to talk about than we were before he started, and we still are. And I think that these players know that. And I predict that it's really hard to play football without people of color on the field. So I suspect that we're not going to see any grand ruling about this. I think someone said there would be an uproar in the NFL if this happened. Then I hope not. As an American, I take as much pride in them protesting to call attention to injustice as I do seeing my team win. Of course, my team is the Giants, so I'm really actually more with the protesters right now.
And David Frum, Sean Hannity did stick with the president and pressed him on DACA and went after it more than once. Of course, this is the subject that apparently Sean Hannity has successfully advised the president on. And he wanted to know whether the deal with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on DACA is holding, and clearly it is not. It is now the new Hannity deal, where the president said, in order to take care of the 800,000 kids on DACA, they're going to have to build me my wall.
Well, I'm going to repeat the astute point Jason made a few seconds ago, which is, look, this is the president's moment talking to his favorite interviewer in front of a very soft audience of persuadables to build a wider consensus for things he's going to do. He's got a tough week coming up. Next week is Iran deal week, where he has to either recertify or decertify the Iran deal. By all reports, he's planning on doing something kind of complicated, which is decertifying and yet not imposing sanctions. You would think that what you would want to do in an interview like this is explain that policy, which is sort of a halfway measure, and build some consensus among your closest supporters for it. You might, with the same thing with immigration, as you just point out, the president is trying to walk a line. He is trying to provide some kind of respite for the 800,000 people who entered underage, while toughening other forms of enforcement. You would want to build a consensus for that. He does. What he does is he sort of bathes in Sean Hannity's smiles, but he does not try to persuade in a way that would be effective in mobilizing Republican opinion to do what he wants, or we think he wants it to do.
I want to do one more slice of this interview, and it is the most exquisite standalone piece of its own. It needs no introduction, no setup. It is perfectly clear, but the control room has to know, it's the one about the Electoral College.
One other thing I have to say, the Electoral College I never appreciated. I would rather have a popular vote. For me, it's easier because you go to different states. For me, the popular vote is easier.
Show of hands. Anyone not speechless at that? Jason Johnson, go ahead. The president who lost the popular vote by a record margin says the popular vote is easier.
You know, it's so interesting that he keeps changing the rules. It's like playing Connect 4 with a 7-year-old. They're just going to say, well, now it's Connect 3 and now it's Connect 7, depending on what they think they can actually win with. But this is the thing. This speaks to the fact that we're literally almost a year away from the election. And this president is talking about how he won and arguing with people as to whether or not that matters. The girl is over. She left you at prom. It's done. Win. Move on and actually run the presidency. And unfortunately, as long as we have a president who's obsessed with cultural issues, obsessed with how he won, and not actually managing the government, when he has a coalition of his own party running every single branch, this entire country is in trouble. And that's what I got after seeing this interview.
The Trump presidency has a new motto. For me, the popular vote is easier. Anna Marie Cox, David Frum, Jason Johnson, got to leave it there for tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.